Hi guys, it's Mark Zicree, Mr. Sci-Fi, also known as Mark Zicree of Space Command, and a lot is happening. The visual effects team is up and running, the pre-production team is up and running. A lot of stuff is happening. We're working on the Showrunners Network. I'm waiting to hear back from my publisher on greenlighting yourself, the new book, and on and on. But today I wanted to talk about something very interesting. First of all, I'm wearing my Prometheus t-shirt. I just found a used Blu-ray of Prometheus with this cool t-shirt. Now, Prometheus fits into a category of film and TV show, particularly film, that I've coined, which is a show or a movie that's great if you just ignore the people in the foreground who are talking. So with Prometheus, the visual design is terrific. There's so many cool things to take from that movie, but many, many stupid plot turns. So this is, of course, a problem with many things because, to quote both Theodore Sturgeon and Guillermo del Toro, Ted coined Sturgeon's law, which is 90% of everything is crap, and Guillermo's law countering that is 10% of everything is awesome. So both are true. So first of all, I wanted to recommend a show that Elaine and I just watched, which I very much enjoyed. We'll get into all of this stuff. Many of you have seen many, many, many TV shows and movies, particularly TV shows, where it starts with a great premise and then it just totally goes haywire as it continues. And the reason for that is many, many people can come up with a cool notion, something mysterious and strange. The dead come back, the plane lands and the people are from the turn of the century, whatever. It doesn't matter. The point is that they can come up with a great idea and they can even sell it. And then it's like, uh-oh, we've got 10 or 20 or 30 or 100 episodes. What do we do now? And they have no idea. For instance, Lost, Damon Lindelof told me, and I know he's been quoted saying this in the press, when they sold Lost and when the show was greenlit, JJ went off to do the movies he was doing, and they had never plotted it beyond the pilot. He had no idea where it went. So... and so they kind of meander and most shows just totally, you've spent 10 hours of your life or 20 hours or years of your life watching a show, and it's like, what on earth? Why did that go so totally south? And the reason is because, again, a crazy, creepy science fiction or fantasy idea, particularly science fiction idea, you can come up with it and it's great and it's interesting. And Rod Serling used to talk about, all these different Twilight Zone ideas he came up with that he never pursued because he could work up the beginning and the middle, but he could never come up with a satisfactory end. And he said, I much prefer if I have the ending and then I can work back from that if the ending is satisfactory. And but many, many writers are so eager to sell a show that they think, well, we'll worry about that later. We'll come up with something later. And then it becomes this amazing Rube Goldberg device of insane proportions where it just keeps coming up with these turns that are so peculiar and so nutty just to get to an ending that somehow at least gets somewhere. And one of my favorite versions of this that actually worked right is there's a wonderful writer named Carlton Morse, and he did a great radio show called I Love a Mystery and another show called Adventures by Morse. So these were really cool mysteries with all these bizarre twists and turns, very lurid and wonderful, and I highly recommend them. You can find them on the internet, and you can find them on YouTube. It's Adventures by Morse and I Love a Mystery, the radio versions, just wonderful. But one of my favorites was he wrote this mystery, The City of the Dead. That was the first continuing episode of Adventures by Morse, and it takes place in a graveyard, and all these terrible things happen, these murders and so forth. And he was totally writing by the seat of his pants. He was writing it as it went along, and it was airing, in weekly installments. And so finally, he got to the end episode where the hero explains to the other characters, the surviving characters, what actually has happened. And Carlton Morse, had to come up with a satisfactory conclusion. And so the hero's explaining it, and then he explains finally that the caretaker of the graveyard committed the murders. And one of the characters says, well, but that thing that he did, this murder at this point, that would have been completely against his own self-interest. And the hero says, well, by then, of course, he was completely insane. So good, well done, Carlton Morse, whom I actually met and who was a wonderful man, and one of his His one of his family is actually an investor in Space Command, so thank you guys. But he came up with an elegant solution because he admitted that it's like, this doesn't make any sense, but just go with it. But most writers don't do that. Most writers just kind of say, okay, we're going to force this down your throat. So Elaine and I just watched an old TV show called The Bridge. And again, it starts well, these murders happening in America and Mexico across the border, and really interesting lead characters, good casting, and then it just gets more and more and more preposterous until it has an ending that is absolutely ludicrous. And Elaine and I have seen so many TV shows where both English and American and from other countries, where it's like, oh, we're under the sea in an experimental station, and we watch the show, and then by the time you get to episode 7, episode 8, you're going, oh man, and then you kind of bail because it's like, it's basically breaking all the rules of who the characters are, all the rules of what the plot, what any plot logic would be, any connection to reality. So, but when you come up with one that does it right, it's a cause for celebration. So I'm going to tell you about one that Elaine and I just watched that I really like. And meantime, we're working on Space Command. We're working on the Showrunners Network. We're doing our, job as dramatists and directors and writers. But the show I just watched is on Netflix, and I really want to applaud Netflix because it established that you can have shows in foreign languages, you can have shows made in other countries, and people will watch them here. And we've gotten these great shows from other countries, and there's a show that came out just the last week or two called Katla, and it is set in the amazing terrain of Iceland. And, Prometheus was shot, the early parts of Prometheus were shot in Iceland. There's an amazing terrain there. And Katla is a multi-part series, season 1, in which there's this town that's basically been abandoned because of a volcano. A long dormant volcano has erupted again, and it's covering everything in ash, and it's still going, and it's right by the glacier. And there's a young woman whose sister was lost a year earlier, and she's been in grief since then. And all of a sudden, this naked figure covered in ash, stumbles out of the debris field, and then when they clean her off, it's the sister. And it's like, well, where have you been for the last year? How did this happen? She has no memory of that. But she remembers her sister. She remembers her previous life. And then more people start emerging from the volcano slash glacier. And it's wonderfully acted. The characters are really great. And it's in Icelandic, Swedish, and English. They basically are, going between the 3 languages. And again, watch it in the original languages. I don't like a lot of the dubbed versions. I don't find the acting of the dubbing very good. But the cool thing about this show is, as the mystery deepens, the rules start changing, and it becomes more and more interesting, more and more mysterious, more and more intriguing. And finally, at the end, it comes to, I won't spoil it, but it comes to a very emotionally satisfying conclusion. Now, there may be a second season, but the good part is, a good show, rather than just ending on a cliffhanger that they then becomes more and more preposterous in season 2, they actually came to an emotional conclusion. So whether or not the show has a second season, we'll see what they do with that. But the first season is really great. And in fact, the funny thing is, the ending is very similar to just the end shot is very similar to the ending of a Twilight Zone episode called Mr. Garrity and the Graves. And that's all I'm going to say. I won't reveal any more. Speaking of which, I'm about to do the Twilight Zone commentaries I haven't done. We'll be talking about that very soon. But again, the show is called Katla, Katla. It's named after the volcano. And another movie I watched recently was Aniara, which is, again, it's a science fiction movie based on a Swedish poem, interestingly enough. A very good but very dark film. But I can recommend those 2. And Dune, of course, is coming up. We'll see how Dune is, how it works. But these are some things I can recommend that are really quite wonderful, and you will be well served for watching them. And beyond that, we're going to be continuing. We're going to be posting more Mr. Sci-Fis very soon. I've been extremely busy with Space Command and all the other projects we're working on, including Ashes, which is a science fiction movie Elaine has written and will be directing. And, Mitch Susskind is now aboard the team. He's a 3-time Emmy winner for VFX from Lost and Star Trek Discovery and he started on ET, or he did ET back in the old days, and working with amazing people, Joe Lawson, another really great VFX guy we've worked with before, and it just keeps going. I mean, we're having a great old time. So that's it for now. Thank you all for all of your support. We're still selling Space Command shares at $7,500 each. We still have the Patreon account. You can throw some money our way. The Kickstarter campaign that we just did succeeded, which was great. Thank you all. And you know, our goal, and we're pitching, you know, to the networks, to the buyers, all of that. It continues. And but our main priority is to make wonderful shows that make sense and write books and do all these things that entertain you and move you and have meaning to us and to you. So that's it for now. We'll talk really soon. If there's any Mr. Sci-Fi subject you'd like me to talk about, I know I'm not up to speed on the current season of Discovery, or haven't talked about the new upcoming season of Picard or any of those things because, you know, I'm busy doing stuff, but we'll get to that in good time. So that's it for now. Thanks so much. Really great to have you in my life. If you see me on the street or out in public, say, Mr. Sci-Fi, you know, that'll be great fun. It's always fun to be recognized for what we're doing. And that's it for now. So we'll talk again real soon. Bye, guys.